Hey everyone, it's nice to see articles like this for an actual politician. I'm actually a little shocked. I almost fell off my seat a little earlier when I seen this article because I thought, this doesn't sound like something a politician would say. But yet, here we are. Headline out of CBC News, New Brunswick. Finance Minister raises prospect of privatizing cannabis NB after $11.7 million loss. Ernie Steves beyond disappointed with first fiscal year results of Crown-owned recreational marijuana retailer. Being reported by Bobby Jean McKinnon, April 30th, 2019. Finance Minister Ernie Steves wants the province to consider privatizing Cannabis NB or closing some of its stores after the Crown-owned retailer of recreational marijuana products recorded a loss of $11.7 million during its first fiscal year. To say I'm disappointed would be an understatement, Steve said Tuesday after the unaudited year-end results were released. I'm looking for a way to try and save some money for taxpayers, trying to make some money for taxpayers and try to bring in some revenue for taxpayers, and this has not turned out to be one of those ways. The figures showed total sales of cannabis for the quarter ending March 31st were 9.7 million, resulting in a year-end total of 18.6 million. Let me just say, as someone from New Brunswick that grew up there, partially, then my parents moved me to Ontario because they were seeking employment. And even back in the day in the 80s when I was brought up here in the early 80s, yes, this was still a problem, that there was a lot of aspects of the economy on the East Coast that were so detrimental that a lot of people, a large substantial portion of the population of that province, had to travel elsewhere for gainful employment. So that alone has been something that's been decades in the making. And things have only got progressively worse since then. Yeah, that is one of the provinces. Listen, there's very few industries in that province that is viable or economically successful. I've seen that province go from being actually relatively productive 20, 30 years ago. I've seen the erosion of all the economic activity in that province, but there's one area that has flourished even from the time when I was, like I say, just a young kid till today, and that's the marijuana or cannabis industry. There's a few areas in that province where people are making money. One is obviously those who work for government, because government seems to be one of the biggest employers in that province, or the Irving Group. But other than that, the other area is marijuana or cannabis cultivation or grow ops. And as someone that's from the central part of New Brunswick, where there's a whole lot of rural areas and a whole lot of areas where you can grow marijuana, yeah, I've seen with my own eyes that cannabis cultivation is very much something that's still part and parcel of the NB experience. So of course I would fully suspect and realize that, yeah, most people are going to be running to Cannabis NB to get their pot or their marijuana or their cannabis products, right? Why would anyone want to go and pay a higher price or a higher rate for the cannabis they consume and pay taxes on top of that? Yeah, most Canadians aren't that wealthy, aren't that well off. So of course, the majority of them are still going to be going to their original source, or those who have been providing their cannabis for all these years. When Cannabis NB launched last October, former President and CEO Brian Harriman had predicted sales of 45 million during the first fiscal year, which he expected would result in a break-even or small loss once startup and operational costs were factored in. Harriman resigned earlier this month. On Tuesday, General Manager Laura Wood described the financial results as pretty good for only 22 weeks of sales since the stores opened on October 17 when recreational cannabis became legal across Canada. We knew there would be challenges and unknowns in this brand new industry, said Wood, blaming the losses largely on supply challenges, not its higher than illegal market prices. But Steves is questioning whether the existing business model implemented by the former Liberal government of Brian Gallant needs to be revamped. He said 20 storefronts seems like a bit of overkill, particularly because they're expensive to lease and operate. It's hard to imagine that it would be sustainable at this point, but if sales go up dramatically, then there you go. Anyways, I'll post a link to this article in the description of the video below. But like I say, folks, even these people that are wondering, listen, the private, the free, or I guess as they would normally call it, is the black market. Listen, those in government, because think of all the added incurred costs that's going to be a direct result of placing that in the hands of central planners or crony corporations. The costs are going to be exponentially higher than those who don't have all those additional costs, or who don't have to charge their customers a tax surcharge on it. You're never going to be able to compete with the free or the black market. So any attempt or any endeavor to try to continue on this path of placing these cannabis operations in the hand of government approved monopolies, it's not going to work. It's not going to be beneficial for the investors. It's not going to be beneficial for those in the medicinal aspect of the community, or even the recreational cannabis users. Because once again, everyone's going to be looking and continuing to go to where they can get the best price, a higher quality product, and without having to pay the mafioso or government an extra surcharge or tax on their cannabis consumption habits. People like myself, I mean, I've said long ago how this wasn't going to work out, but I guess a lot of Canadians have to wait to hear it from those in the established media before they even start to understand that that is a reality. I wish more and more Canadians would actually start listening to people that aren't a representation of their current thought leaders, because if you did, you'd be much better educated and vastly more well informed as a consequence, or in contrast and comparison, than the list of these people that really don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.